Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Three Things You Need to Know. I'm Pam Jacobson, your host. For those of you who don't know me, I have a long career in healthcare. I was a nurse originally. I am a master's trained and licensed in Chinese medicine, and since 2016, I've been board certified in functional medicine. So I work with clients all over the country. My goal is to help them optimize their health and restore normal function. And I do that mostly these days via phone video consultation. I use a full gamut of laboratory testing and really work to help people reach their health optimization goals. So let's get started. So 3 things you need to know. That's the format going forward. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. If you happen to be catching this on recording, please make your comments to me via my website, which is thehealingsanctuaryoc.com. You can also contact me through there as well. So 3 things you need to know. Today, we're going to talk about the critical, important nutrient B12. We're going to talk about bursts or bust when it comes to your daily exercise, and we're going to talk about the new news or top of the news this last week or so has been a lot of discussion about inflammation. So I'll talk about that in the COVID situation, but also in general. So a little bit about B12. I do get this question frequently from my patients, and I have to say that I also see this relatively commonly, and that would be, a deficiency or perhaps less than optimal B12 levels. So what is B12? It's a very important, what we call cofactor, and it's a nutrient that we can get from our food supply pretty readily, but it's only available in and from animal sources in our diet. So you can see immediately where a potential deficiency issue could be for someone who does not consume a diet that has animal products, like a strict vegan or strict vegetarian. But some other reasons why someone might be deficient is because they already have an illness of some kind, particularly digestive illness, because a lot of the absorption and conversion of B12 to its usable form happens in the digestive system, in the stomach, also with some help from the pancreas, and it's a pretty complex process. So any kinds of diseases, digestive diseases, use of medications like metformin, which is a blood sugar management medication, because again, it affects the pancreas, or antacids or proton pump inhibitors that affect the function of the stomach and the acid process there. Those things can create a deficiency for B12. There's some genetic underpinning for it, alcoholism or overuse of alcohol, and, like I said before, other various types of illnesses and diseases. So you can see that there is an opportunity in many cases for us to be deficient in B12, and I see it relatively commonly in the blood labs that I run on my clients. But again, people are coming to me, usually they've got some kind of pre-existing health issue. So what does B12 do? Why is it so important? I would say that it is such a critical player in just about every function in the body. And the reason is because it is so important for your nervous system. It has many functions in the nervous system. It's helped maintain the nervous system. It helps with synthesis of DNA and myelination, which is the coating on the nerves and the nervous system. It helps with fat, protein, and carbohydrate metabolism. So it's very important for your ability to use and absorb those nutrients from your diet. It helps with the maintenance of glutathione. Glutathione is an antioxidant, one of the most important antioxidants for our health, and we make it inside our bodies, and B12 is a very important factor in that production. So you can see B12's kind of reach into many areas of function in the body. It also is very critical for regeneration of the red blood cells. So, if you're deficient in B12, it can create a lot of issues for you. And some of the symptoms that you might experience if you're deficient in B12, well, lots of neurological symptoms. You could have things like numbness and tingling and problems with nerve conduction in the body. You can have problems in the brain, everything from foggy brain to confusion to depression and other types of mental health disorders. I've actually had a couple of really interesting cases in my practice where one was a young gal that had a kind of a nervous breakdown, if you will, significant depression. And, they put her on medications and did all these things that weren't helping, but no one really looked at the fact that this young gal had self-imposed a vegan diet. She was trying to keep up with her friends at school as far as her weight was concerned, and she was doing a bit of disordered eating around this vegan diet. And she had become so deficient in B12 that it had created this appearance of having a significant mental health disorder. It landed her in a treatment facility, and eventually looking at her labs and genetics, and many of us looking at the case together, we were able to see that this was what had basically set off this issue for her. So B12 deficiency is no joke, guys. So it's really important to really watch out for these symptoms and to make sure you're getting adequate levels of B12. Some of the other things you might experience: dizziness, constipation, diarrhea, all kinds of digestive issues. So if you, I would say most of us are probably somewhat deficient in B12. And the great news about B12 is that it is safe, right? It's water soluble, so your body will basically dump out whatever it doesn't need if you're taking doses above what are necessary for you. And I think the reality is, when we look at the science, and my friends at Lifestyle Matrix have been really excellent about putting together and really looking at all of the science around studies on B12, is that we don't see a level of toxicity. And what we do know is that it's such a complex absorption mechanism to get B12 into the cells to actually be used, that only a small percentage of what we consume through our diet and what we might consume through supplementation actually gets where it needs to go. So it's actually an accepted practice to dose higher, knowing that you're not going to absorb all of that. So usually in multiples over what the government's RDA, or recommended daily allowance, is. And so what I do with my clients, especially if they come to me with any of these symptoms, or I see any evidence in their blood labs, and if you're not sure, reach out to me. I'm happy to order some basic blood labs and to help you kind of sort that out. But again, you can't hurt yourself with B12, so you could always, do a trial of some B12 supplementation for a period of time and see if that makes a difference for you. I do always use B12 in patients that have any kind of neurological issues, fatigue, if they've been under a tremendous amount of stress, which is all of us lately. So I would say, you could put yourself on a trial of B12 supplementation pretty safely. And again, I'm happy to help you have access to some of the best products that are out there. In terms of, for me, the absorption, because it is so tricky, I tend to use sublingual, under the tongue, or oral forms that are sprayed in the mouth, so that the absorption can begin right into the mucosa of the mouth and into the bloodstream. And so that can sometimes be helpful with absorption. So if you need any help getting things like that, please reach out to me. So how much B12 do you really need? Well, if we're looking at multiples over the recommended daily allowance, right? And in these studies, we were testing patients to see at what point did their serum levels get to an acceptable place. It was usually about 1,000 micrograms per serving or per day. And what we know about bees also is it's better to take it in the morning and in the afternoon. So I'll usually give my patients, depending on what I found in their blood labs, anywhere from 1,000 all the way up to 5,000 micrograms a day, and have them split that up into a morning and an afternoon dose. So again, the sublingual oral forms, I think, are better. I get better results with my patients. I usually have them do that twice a day, 1,000 micrograms up to 5,000 micrograms a day. So that's the scoop on B12, guys. I think that most of us need it. I do supplement most of my patients, especially if they already have some kind of a pre-existing health issue, or stress, or they have a poor diet. If those are any combination of factors, then B12 is always on that supplement list. So any questions that you have, feel free to ask me questions here. And if you're watching this later again, you can reach out to me through the website, or the direct email for the office is frontdesk@thehealingsanctuaryoc.com if you want to just email me directly. So number 2 things that you need to know. I talk a lot about the importance of movement of the body. It's one of my top 5. Sleep is number 1, stress response is 1.1. Movement is really number 2 on the list. And the reason is because we have so many great studies around exercise and the importance of moving our physical body really on a daily basis, right? If we aren't moving ourselves pretty much every day in some way, in the studies, we look at percentage of health and longevity, and mortality is really probably the technical term for it. And the more someone exercises and moves their body, the lower we see this mortality risk. And I get this pushback from my clients all of the time, and I am in the same boat that all of you are, right? I'm sheltering at home. My whole practice is basically now online. And I can't go to my regular exercise venues, right? Many of us had trainers, or we went to the gym, or we had exercise classes, and we did not, we had to stop those due to the shelter in place orders in most of our states. And so I think what many of us did is we just stayed home and we didn't do anything for movement. Now things are starting to open back up and we're getting back out. Maybe some of you are returning to the gym, but many of you may get stuck in this mode of not doing or not having daily movement. And maybe for some of you, you're getting back to your regular work life and finding that you're busier than you've ever been. And so setting aside the time. And so there were a couple of really, I think, well done studies in the last few years looking at, was it really important that we moved our body for an hour or hour and a half at a time? Did it have to be in a gym setting? Did it have to be done a certain way? And what we found in those studies is that the reality was that as long as you were moving throughout your day, and in fact, there were a couple of studies that said if you were moving throughout your day in shorter bursts, that actually had almost a better benefit than doing a concentrated 1 hour workout with your trainer at the gym. For me, what this means is it gives me a lot of flexibility, right? I know that I need to move my body every day, right? That's been well established in the literature for a long time. Many of us don't move every day. Maybe we do it 5 days a week. But if you can move your body every day and you have the flexibility of doing that in short bursts and being able to figure out how to use the environment that you're in to supplement that. Right. So some ideas for you, especially as you're returning to work, or if, like me, you've shifted your work to be more online. So perhaps you're still working from a home-based office. What are some of the things that you could do that would be in the short burst? Now, the idea of short burst is that you're taking a few minutes at a time and that it is still moderate intensity. So this is not just doing a little bit. This is for that 3 or 4 or 5 minutes that you're going to do your burst, that you do it all out, that you're giving yourself moderate intensity. You want to get that heart rate up. You want to get a little bit breathless. But again, it's for a very short period of time. So the first thing I would say is you need some kind of timing device, right? Something that gets you up out of your chair and reminds you that you want to do it, and that you can then time yourself so that you're not taking more time than you had intended, right? You want this to become a good habit. So what I would say is set your timer to remind you every hour, get up out of your chair and have a plan for how many minutes you're going to spend. Because at the end of your day, you need to have accumulated somewhere around 30 minutes would be your minimum, but you'd want to be working more toward that 50 to 60 minute spread throughout the day. So I tell my patients to get paid to exercise, right? Do this during your workday. So by the time you get done with your workday, you're done, right? And you got basically paid to exercise. So time yourself, get up every hour. And some ideas, a rebounder. I love, love, love the idea of a rebounder. It's a mini trampoline. You can buy them on Amazon, not super expensive. And you can have it nearby, right? If you are at home or you have a private office, you can have that right close by. So during that, when your timer goes off, you can just get up out of your chair, slip your shoes off, and get on there. You can walk in place, you can march in place, you can jump, and you can build up your tolerance and your ability on that as you go along. There's some great videos on YouTube for how to use a rebounder. But really, honestly, if you just got on there and you just marched in place for 3 or 4 minutes, that is definitely going to get your heart rate up. So I love a rebounder for that reason. And it's a piece of equipment, so it takes up some space, and it reminds you, right? If you have to step over it if you're going to walk by. So a rebounder is a great idea. There are tons of things that you can Google: the 5-minute office workout, the 3-minute office workout. Everybody's got that short workout that you can do in your work clothes, in your office setting: desk push-ups, wall sits, jumping jacks. Again, looking for anything that you could do in a small amount of space using your own body, and you're getting your heart rate up for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes at a time. So office workouts, you can Google that. There's a lot of different ones. I think they're all really, most of them are really terrific. Another idea would be if you can get out of your space. I really would prefer to be outside in the sunshine and the fresh air and doing a very brisk walk or a little jog right around my area, whether it's around your building or maybe up and down the stairwell. But again, use your surroundings, right? If you start to really pay attention, there's plenty of things around you that you could incorporate into your body movement exercise routine for that few minutes. If there's a little short wall nearby, you can do some step ups onto the wall. And again, obviously you have to do this to your own ability. But the idea would be that over time, you should be able to increase the level of intensity and the level of difficulty that you're doing. But again, you're just keeping it to a few minutes at a time. So little bursts throughout your day, lots of different things that are available to you, some great YouTube videos, great online resources for giving you ideas around short little burst type workouts that you can do throughout your day. I also am a big fan of yoga, and there are a few challenging yoga poses that can get your heart rate up quickly. I guess you would have to have on clothing that would make it easy for you to do that. But again, there's some good resources online for you. Like anything else that we want to do consistently, routinely in our lives, you have to prep and plan. What that means for me is on Sunday morning, I sit down, I look at my coming week, and I determine, where am I going to fit in my exercise? How am I going to make sure I get enough sleep? What time am I going to go to bed? What time am I going to wake up? What does my opportunity look like for nourishment? What are my meals going to look like? Am I going to be, at a meeting and not able to have dinner at a certain time? Do I need to pack lunch for work? Whatever that might be, same with Move Body. If you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. So I love the timer idea because you can just set that. And so it just constantly reminds you every hour to get up and move your body. So at the end of your day, you've completed it. Now you're not faced with having to spend an hour at the gym. For me, at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is go to a gym for an hour. However, another opportunity would be to use a trainer. The Healing Sanctuary has affiliated with a company called Emerge and Be. I'll put that in the chat here for you, their website. But Emerge and Be is both a local service for those of you here in the Orange County area. They're a mobile training service. They come to you, to your home or work, or meet you in a park. You can work out with them as individual or partnered with someone else, or you can get your group of your friends together and you can do a class in a park, which is not a bad idea at this point in the COVID situation where many gyms and things aren't open, and it really would be better to be outside. You could get a few of your friends together and use a service like this to guide you. And they've been working throughout the whole COVID shelter at home, doing live online instruction for their clients. So I highly recommend them. I personally know Michelle, the owner of the company. She is and has been a trainer for me in the past. And I just think it's a lovely service that they offer and very affordable as far as having your own personal trainer. So emergeandb.com, check them out. So that's exercise. The third thing you need to know today is about inflammation. And I've got a couple questions. Let's see. In a multi with B, is a multi with B12 enough and do I need to take it in, or do I need to take it in an isolated form? I would say that most multis, a multivitamin, we're trying to be everything to everyone in a multivitamin, right? There maybe are a few out there. I particularly love Orthomolecular's Mitocore. I saw a physician at one point, and she asked me what I was taking, and I showed her the list of things in that, and she said, "Oh, that's like a multi on steroids," right? It's a really great product, and it's got a great level of B12 in it. But when I find that my client is deficient in B12, I generally have them take that as a separate individual product, right? A B12 specifically. If I'm trying to get up to those higher doses, I don't necessarily want other things mixed in there with it. Same thing with the B complex. A B complex would have multiple, you've got multiple types of B, B1, B3, B7. You've got lots of B vitamins. They all have their own role. And I do like a B complex for a lot of my patients. But if I've got someone who needs higher levels of B12, I'll generally supplement that separately. So good question. Thank you for that. And a comment that movement is medicine. Absolutely. Right. For you guys that are watching, if you're concerned about having optimal health and longevity, and daily movement is not currently in your regimen, you have to put it there in order to achieve those goals, right? It is so very, very critical. I find, things like B12 and the nutrients that I talk about, they're supplements. What does that mean? Supplement means to support. What that is supporting is a foundation that you are creating. So if you're not creating a good, optimized, healthy foundation, the supplementation is not going to be as effective for you, right? That is to supplement, to help promote function, but you have to create a baseline. And there is absolutely no question that exercise, daily movement of the body, is a key component to that. So item number 3 is your brain on fire, right? So one of my goals each week in the 3 things you need to know is to cover something that is current in the news, important things happening. But we've heard a lot about inflammation or cytokine storm in this COVID situation. And I just wanted to talk about inflammation because it's very much an umbrella, big catch-all term. What does it mean? And what are we seeing in the current, the viral issue that we have? But I feel even more importantly, those of us, and most of us have there's a certain level of inflammation in the body that is necessary, actually, that is expected and accepted. But I would say that most of us have much higher levels of inflammation. So I kind of look at inflammation like I would rust on a car, for instance, right? If we don't see it as much now because cars have all kinds of protective coatings. But back in my day, when I was growing up in the wintertime, that was a real problem, right? The salt from the roads and the water would cause the car to get rust on it. And I think inflammation inside the body is kind of rusting from the inside out. We get this breakdown of really every type of tissue in our body, whether it's your bones or your nerves or your connective tissue. Inflammation is a part of just about every disease process that we see, right? Brain diseases like Alzheimer's, the cytokine storm that we see in the COVID-19 situation, autoimmune diseases, digestive diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all have their roots in inflammation. So what causes inflammation? Well, we have to go back again to that foundation that I was talking about a few minutes ago. When that foundation is shaky, we are going to have inflammatory issues. And so that foundation is your sleep, getting enough sleep, enough quality sleep so the body can repair itself. It is getting managing your response to stress. I talked about that a couple weeks ago in the crisis video. So go back and take a look at that. I gave you a lot of good information about how to manage stress response. Moving your body every day, which we talked about today, super critical for managing that inflammatory response. Your diet. So we do see a lot of inflammatory involvement in the body based on how well we fuel ourselves, what our nutrition looks like. We can get a lot of inflammatory issues from things like gluten and corn and soy and having too much dairy. And a lot of that depends, again, on the general health of the person already, whether or not they already have some type of pre-existing health issue. So again, this inflammatory process, different for each of us, but is very common and very much a big problem. Some of the ways that you can test to see what your inflammatory levels look like, there are some blood tests that we can do, things like C-reactive protein, sedimentation rate. There's actually a visual test online through survivingmold.com called the VCS test, and it's a visual contrast sensitivity test. When the brain is inflamed, as we'll see some of the symptoms of that would be foggy brain, trouble concentrating, depression or any other mood instability, forgetfulness and memory issues, all the way up, Alzheimer's and dementias and other types of brain situations like that. So when that's happening in the brain, we lose our ability to perceive contrast. And it's a test that you can do online, and they give you the instructions to do it properly so it's accurate. And we do find that it's an extremely accurate test to determine if somebody has a lot of inflammation in their brain. Now, it won't tell us why, but it will tell you that you do have inflammation in your brain, and then you can, work with someone like me to help kind of figure out what's creating that. But oftentimes, if I get someone that has a positive VCS test, or I see some of these other inflammatory markers in their blood labs, I will have them first. We always have to go back to that foundation, guys. It's like you can't build a house and put the roof on before you put the foundation down. So I usually will have my clients for the first 60 days or so work on all of those things I just talked about, and then reevaluate. A lot of times at the end of 60 days, we can get a normal VCS test, and we can see those inflammatory markers start to drop. So I think, the thing to really understand about inflammation is that some is good, too much is definitely bad. Most of us have more opening back up, fear about what that's going to look like, our finances, our jobs, whatever that might be. The stress is probably one of the number one drivers of inflammatory in the body. And what we're seeing in the COVID situation is once the virus is inside the body, once it gains access, it impacts the way that the immune system, functions. And for those of us that have some genetic underpinning for trouble with the handoff from the initial responding part of our immune system to the kind of long-term adaptive part of our immune system, we will see this significant response. And inflammation is a player in that. And those of us that are really inflamed at the point that we get infected are going to have a rougher journey than those of us that have been doing a good job of working on that inflammatory process. So what the foundational things are that you need to do, because I've talked about that ad nauseum the last several weeks. But there are some supplemental things you could do. B12 is one of them. But a really important aspect in functional medicine of helping with inflammatory processes outside of the foundational pieces is turmeric or curcumin. Lots of products that have those in it. However, it's not easily absorbed. You need to have a fat with it. And so using, again, medical grade, nutraceutical grade products where the companies that are creating these things understand the way to make their products so that they're bioavailable and absorbed in the body. So if you're going to use turmeric or curcumin, you want to make sure that it is a pure extracted form, that you're using it in some type of a fat if it's not already rendered in the product that you're using. Melatonin is an important anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. It helps deepen sleep, and we know sleep is number one on that foundational scale. So you can use melatonin. My recommendation is some type of a sustained release product, 3 milligrams at bedtime, and that can help deepen the sleep and provide good anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. Essential fatty acids, guys, this is super, super important and something that is readily available. But again, you need to be careful about the quality of the product. Essential fatty acids are oil-based. This is going to be your fish oil, omega-3. You want to make sure that that is in a good, healthy, I think clean oil base, and unfortunately oils are very volatile. So working with somebody like me to be able to get access to a high quality product that has enough of the acid in it to make a difference, very, very important, especially for the cardiovascular system. Probiotic for your good bacteria, very important in controlling inflammation in the body. So if you were doing these things on a regular basis, I have in my mind, a basic daily regimen of supplementation, right? So assuming that you're doing all the foundational pieces, these things I just mentioned are things that I would be using on a daily basis to help manage this inflammatory process in the body, and really increase your chances that should you get infected with the COVID virus, that you will not go on to have the difficult journey that some folks have had. So, I'm always available to answer your questions. You know how to reach me, healingsanctuaryoc.com. And I encourage all of you, if there are things that you want to know more about, please reach out and let me know. Otherwise, join me here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. for 3 things you need to know. Have a great day.